Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reimagine 2020 V5. I'm Roshan Mirajkar, one of your hosts for this event, and it's Happy Hodl Days. We're here with our fifth version of the event, and we're doing a holiday special celebrating the whole year and bringing everyone together. So excited to be joined here today by James Simpson, one of the co-founders here at mStable, and a returning guest here at Reimagine 2020. James, thank you so much for joining us today. How have you been since the last time we've spoken to you? The markets have been crazy. DeFi has been crazy. How's you and your team been?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Roshan. I'm really happy to be back on Reimagine. Last time was super fun, and it's good to kind of revisit because obviously in crypto, 1 year feels like 10 years. A lot's happened in the past few months. So yeah, excited to kind of walk through some of the things that we've been working on and how we view the DeFi market generally. We've been pretty good. We obviously launched our product back in May, and now since then it's been out in the wild for a while. We've had lots of user feedback, and we've tried to kind of improve the protocol as much as possible according to that feedback. So yeah, great to be back on the show.
Yeah, awesome. I think last time we spoke to you, you're only about 12 weeks in. So this time it's great to talk to you again to see where things are. I think, last time we covered a lot about how you got into the space and, some different developments starting out. So this time I want to kind of get into first, can you kind of explain again what is mStable's role and why you're sort of building this to start off with? Because I think it's important to highlight that you're not just building this randomly. It's always in response to something or in preparation for something. So you can take one of those questions and answer it however you want.
Yeah, for sure. So the kind of reason for mStable is to really optimize the experience of users who want to have safe, stable value that earns a yield in the cryptocurrency environment. So we call it kind of autonomous stablecoin infrastructure. And through the concept of a USD liquidity pool, so through having a smart contract full of USD deposits, we're able to create a whole suite of products that make stablecoins safer, make them higher yielding, and also just generally more useful. And it's really in response to a kind of a global macro problem or several problems. One is zero or near zero interest rates globally. So if you have US dollars, it's pretty difficult right now to find a yield in a kind of savings account equivalent in traditional finance, and that's because the mechanism in which people get an interest rate in traditional finance is obviously pretty simple. It's through lending and borrowing, and right now interest rates are so low, so that means that the interest rate is therefore low for users. mStable solves that by adding trading fees to lending deposits to create a higher yield. So that's on that side of things. Then specific to the cryptocurrency environment, holding stable coins or holding one stable coin exposes that user to that stable coin completely. So if it fails, then all their money disappears. So mStable tries to create a diversified holding of stable coins with our MUSD asset, which means that if one fails, the user won't be fully exposed to that asset. Then we also have a swap function that I said adds to the interest rate, and that effectively makes it super efficient for people to swap between USD stablecoins. So that's a bit of background on what we're trying to do, but I suppose an overriding theme for us as well is financial accessibility. So with mStable, you can come with any US stablecoin or five whitelisted stablecoins, and you can access a savings account, which is since launch been one of the highest, if not the highest, pure US dollar savings accounts in DeFi and therefore the world. And anyone can come. It's a savings account for anyone, anywhere, and you can access it with 5 different stable coins. So that kind of accessibility thing is really important for us as well.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. And I have some follow-up questions for you there in terms of, would you describe it as sort of an index fund type of thing for stable coins? And 2, are you trying to create a new modern bank with all like new infrastructure of everything you just mentioned? Because right now, banks, whether they're regional banks, or state level banks, or even central banks, they all play a role and they all have the features you just described. However, maybe they're not the most efficient. So is that what you're trying to do? Or is it more so, are you focusing on the protocol? Because I saw the UI and the UX you all are working on, and I would agree that you have a lot of guides and a lot of a lot of helpful guides with each feature. I think the 3 pillars you have is mint, save, and swap. So I really like those 3 features. But yeah, just wondering if it's more like a bank.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing, so we would say it's not like a bank in really critical ways. The first one is that it's non-custodial. So you deposit your money into the mStable contracts, we can't touch it. The only person that can touch it is you. It's impossible for us as a team to access it, or anybody else to access those funds except for you. So it's non-custodial, whereas a bank would take your money and be custodians of that money. So that's a really important aspect made possible by smart contracts. The second thing is that it's governed in a decentralized way. If you hold Meta, you govern the platform. We have a governance.mstable.org where you can stake your Meta and participate in votes and have your say. So it's a decentralized platform as well. So that's kind of just important to realize that it's not functionally like a bank in really important ways. But that said, the kind of final product of an interest rate is something that you can also get at mStable. So mStable is able to generate a USD yield, and we do that through essentially using stablecoin deposits and lending them out. So we lend out all deposits to Compound and Aave, and then we actually are able to use those same deposits as a stablecoin exchange, which generates swap fees. But the user in mStable doesn't get an LP token like you would get in, say, Uniswap. You get a stablecoin. And if you want to access a yield, you can put that stablecoin MUSD into our savings account. Now we have a savings account V2 coming out pretty soon, which we're really excited about, and that'll do some more kind of funky things in order to get a even better risk-adjusted yield for the users, for our users. But yeah, certainly I think to answer your question about banking, DeFi is about reimagining the infrastructure of finance. And I think our definition of banks right now is quite narrow. And we kind of see banks as this kind of corner store place where you have where you put money into an account, and it's just the onboarding process is probably pretty bad, and it's very fragmented and localized and all those kind of things. I think banks of the future will be very different. They'll be more like apps built on protocols. So we expect a whole bunch of applications to be built on mStable, and they might kind of be used in all sorts of ways, maybe payments, or maybe they might kind of productize the savings account feature in a way that we don't do currently. Our kind of app is a very light app on top of smart contracts. There's a whole kind of possibility of people making that more of a product. And then I suppose in that sense, it could compete more with traditional banks. But that's kind of further up the stack, and maybe for another time.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I mean that's a great description. Thanks for that. I think that cleared up some things for me as well, because I know there's a variety of features that you all are doing, and we're gonna get it. I want to get deeper into some of them in a second, but I think you all place you put a lot of effort in making sure there's some safety nets for users and different other things like that, which I think is really important, especially when you're dealing with a market like DeFi, which is it's like the wild wild west, except it's like the open wild wild west, where it's like global, right? So it's hard to create like security protocols and think about all these edge cases for people all over the world. But first, I wanted to get into asking you. I know you recently launched, and you can either tell me this in terms of what you've seen or maybe even predictive. But can you give us a sense of, we saw the DeFi craze, we saw protocols locking hundreds and millions of dollars in days, and I would say that's during the bull market. So my question is, during the bull market, do you think that more people are increasing their liquidity? So you have more liquidity providers in the bull market. So my question is, what happens in the bear market? Do you see the same things, or do you see liquidity go down? Because I think, are there any changes in DeFi? Like we saw what happened with crypto a couple of years ago in 2017, the huge rise, and then we had a lot of people pulling money out. Do you think it's the same in DeFi? Because now you can actually earn interest. You can actually do these other things. Previously, it's like, let me take my money out of the market and store it under your bed per se, but you can't really store it under your bed.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So, I mean, if we think about bull markets and liquidity in DeFi, the question is like, why did hundreds of millions of dollars go onto DeFi platforms in a matter of days or even hours? And it really derived from this liquidity mining thing, that tokens would give their protocol token out to users who provided liquidity onto the DeFi protocol. And that originally obviously came from synthetics that had something like that, and then Compound did it, and very effectively, and you kind of saw their liquidity just go vertical as soon as they started this farming initiative. And then subsequently, a lot of other protocols, mStable was about a week after Compound, I think, or something like that. And then there was obviously a whole bunch of other ones, food related, that did the same thing. I think it's important to remember that in bull markets, it's kind of like a cycle. So the liquidity mining program happens. The amount of TVL, or total value locked, increases on the protocol, and then the token itself increases because people get more bullish on the protocol because it has more usage, and then they ideally would require less of that token in order to provide the same incentive. That's kind of an ideal world. What would happen? I think there are a few things that can happen in either the late stage of a bull market. First thing is that the yields kind of decrease significantly, because if everyone is creating these liquidity mining programs, at some point the buyers of those farm tokens are going to run out. There just simply aren't enough buyers for these tokens, because it's a lot of sell pressure, right? It's people providing liquidity, earning the token, then selling it. Very short-term oriented buyers. So I think that the yields inevitably come down once everyone starts doing it. But then I think more importantly, during a bear market, it's very difficult to have these liquidity programs because that cycle actually reverses, and it's perverse. So you have a program of liquidity mining, but the token price is depressed because it's a bear market. You put out lots of the token to liquidity providers. They do the same thing. They're short-term oriented players. So they'll be earning the token, then dumping it. And then the token price actually decreases in value because again, there aren't that many buyers, people aren't that bullish. And you're just kind of inflating your token without much utility. So I think it can actually, in a bear market, be much less effective, this whole yield farming thing. So I suppose my answer is that during a bull market, it's much more effective to liquidity increases dramatically.
Yeah, really interesting mechanisms that you just described, and that's why I asked that question, because I was sure that you could answer it and explain it to us. So I think for anyone watching, would go back and rewatch this part right here, because I think you can learn a lot about the incentives and really how everything works. Because I think sometimes we all forget in the market that the yield has to be derived from somewhere, and our the whole crypto and blockchain industry, it's like we have some great springs, and then you could not see that spring for like a couple of years. So just because we have these things set in place now doesn't mean that many of them are sustainable in the long term. Things like hundreds of millions of dollars getting locked up. But I think many of the mechanisms you all are putting in place will hopefully help orient that. So I want to get into that a bit. I know that on the mStable platform, you all are offering zero slippage. So can you kind of go into like what does that actually mean, and two, can this open up new markets when you have more instantaneous transactions between different currencies? Because and like I know it's a long question, but the third thing, I'll just throw a point in there. Like, is this gonna remove like some arbitrage opportunities if you introduce zero slippage? Because people love making use of those opportunities, making money around the world. It's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah. So yeah, as a bit of background, mStable is designed on a one-to-one basis. So if you want to mint our MUSD, you deposit any of our stable coins that we accept, and we give you back that exact number of MUSD. So you put 100 USDC in, we give you back 100 USDC, and you're able to redeem that MUSD for 100 units of the deposited stable coins that we have, always. So it's always on a one-to-one basis. Similarly, if you want to come to mStable with your USDC, but you want USDT, you can swap those 100 and you get, it's just 100 for 100, regardless of their price. It's always 1 for 1. And there is a small trading fee. But apart from that, there is no slippage. And that's particularly important for very, very, very large orders. So if you have, it scales really, really nicely. So if you want to do like a $10 million order, then having a zero slippage and just a 6 basis point fee, then that's quite powerful. So the reason we did that is because for a few reasons. The simplicity of it, I think, is really important, and the kind of efficiency of stablecoin exchange generally, to allow users to actually swap a dollar for a dollar. And it actually kind of is a really great stability mechanism for MUSD as a meta stable coin, because there's a closed loop arb. If MUSD increases in value, then people will mint MUSD. That'll decrease the price of MUSD because there's greater supply. If it goes below value, people will redeem MUSD for the 1 unit of the USDC, which will then reduce supply, and then MUSD will stay at $1. So we've seen MUSD stay at $1 because of that closed loop arb, and that really relies on that one-to-one zero slippage mechanism. And then I think secondly, there are some really substantial but only occasional arbitrage opportunities that this product offers. So every so often you might see a 50 to 200 basis point spread between stable coins. As soon as that happens, people and arbitrage bots can use mStable to trade tens of millions of stable coins out and pay the trading fee and then keep the spread. And that's what we see. We sometimes see orders of 20 million US dollars plus in a day, and that's just because there's been a temporary spread in the market, and that's produced some really solid trading fees. Our swap alone, I think about 2 months ago, we had about 360,000 US dollars generated just in fees from the swap product. It's probably closer to 500 now, and I would need to check that. And all of those fees have gone straight to savers. And that's in addition to all of the lending income as well. So yeah, that's a bit of context on that. Your last question, just remind me, was about arbitrage. I think the one so Curve has a different kind of mechanism. It is actually it's actually always a curve. There's never a point of zero slippage in Curve, and that actually produces a greater. It gets a bit technical, but it actually produces a greater surface area and a greater opportunity for arbitrage. So we're interested in that, and I think for our users, some feedback that we've got is that it would be helpful if there was always liquidity in every underlying stablecoin in mStable, because the trade-off with zero slippage is that people can drain the basket totally of an asset, whereas on Curve you can't drain it beyond a certain point, because then it gets increasingly expensive when it kind of gets below a certain threshold in the pool. So we're actually developing a new AMM that currently will be zero slippage in the middle, but it will, the way that we've designed it now, and we'll have more information soon, is that it won't be zero slippage infinitely. At some point it gets more expensive, and that's in order to guarantee MUSD holders liquidity and redemption liquidity, specifically in underlying stablecoins. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. Yeah, thanks for answering all three of my questions. Yeah, I think you explained it in a really simple, digestible format. And when we think of things like banks, right? Even banks highly rely on liquidity. That everyday people is what they provide when you're going and depositing your money in the bank. What I wanted to tie in here is, I know you all focus obviously heavily on stable coins, and now talking about encompassing the whole year, and talking about the evolution of stable coins. What comes to mind is central bank digital currencies, which everyone is talking about in different nations all around the world in this weird time where a lot of foreign policy and economic policy per countries, they're trying to change that. Do you see in your future development ever tying into these central bank digital currencies? Like, let's say in the future, maybe a nation state, they all agree to use a specific currency. In that case, if I understand correctly, you would be able to integrate that if it was just stable, or are you thinking of focusing more on these newer stable coins that are pegged algorithmically, if that makes sense, versus backed by a dollar or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's really important that mStable just creates stablecoin infrastructure from other stablecoins, existing ones. So whichever direction the stablecoin market goes in, we can create infrastructure for that stablecoin. So if a central bank creates a stablecoin, assuming that it's on some kind of public blockchain, it might be more complicated if it was in a kind of a private blockchain that maybe that country specifically developed or something like that. But assuming that it's done on an open blockchain like Ethereum or elsewhere, because mStable does have a plan to be chain agnostic. So wherever there's stablecoin liquidity, we will build infrastructure. But currently, obviously, Ethereum is where it's at. So that's where we are. But no, certainly, I think we can work with central bank digital currencies. We're here to create really sustainable, safe products for to kind of really optimize stable coins. So we could either add it into the MUSD basket, say if it was a USD stablecoin, or we could create a new M asset if it was a different currency that doesn't exist at the moment. I do think though that there will be always some kind of fragmentation in stablecoin market. So even if the US dollar, even if say the US government came out with a central bank digital currency, I still think there would be demand for something like DAI, which is a decentralized stablecoin, obviously. And the reason is because people don't generate DAI because they want a US dollar. They actually generate DAI because they want to leverage their ETH or other crypto assets. So if you have $100, if you have $150 worth of ETH and you're long ETH, you want to just hold that ETH anyway. You want to be exposed to it. But MakerDAO allows you to put that into a smart contract and generate $100 worth of DAI, and then buy with that $100 worth of DAI more ETH. And now you're exposed to $250 when you only originally had $150 of ETH. So people can leverage their ETH with MakerDAO through generating DAI and then subsequently investing it elsewhere. And that leverage mechanism is something that's always going to be desired, I think. People can still do it in other protocols like Compound, for example. They can, but I think and then there are other use cases that I think potentially central bank digital currencies won't have, like it could be privacy, for example. So I think there will always be some kind of fragmentation in stablecoins, but I'm excited to see where it goes with the central bank stuff. But yeah, if I'm honest, I actually am not that across the developments there as much as I probably should be. I'm more kind of so focused on the DeFi space.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those central bank digital currencies are still in the experimental or just brainstorming phase, because those are more although it's like the same broader infrastructure. It's like you're attaching it to a nation state or a country, versus all of these other stable coins. They're more so, I would say, algorithmic based, and like you just described, they all have specific use cases for what you want. And I think I'm glad you went into that, because what I kind of got from this is on mStable, you don't really offer a lot of leverage products, because you guys are all focused on this part. But however, there are other platforms where if you want more leverage, or even I would maybe compare it to Forex, where you get insanely more leverage. However, you don't get a lot of the benefits that you're describing. In these old financial systems, if you talk to them about zero slippage and things like that, it's very hard, right? Because they have different fragmented systems, like you described. What I want to ask you now is about kind of the behaviors that you've seen, or you can even do this as a prediction for the next year, in terms of earlier. Let's go back to earlier on in the crypto market, when it was still early and we're still in our infancy. We just had crypto, and like you could just buy sell Bitcoin, and that's it. Now that you have the introduction of stable coins, and you have a new way to provide liquidity, do you think that it's like a one-to-one relationship in terms of the Bitcoin price increases, and does that actually drip down into DeFi? Or do you think that both of them are large enough, or they're going to be large enough, where you have two entirely new markets? So like my question is sort of, can someone just, you think people would just buy and keep holding Bitcoin? But then have you seen a new entrance of people that maybe they don't want Bitcoin, right? It's too volatile. They don't want that much exposure to leverage, as you mentioned. However, what people are hating right now is you put your money in the bank and you get like point something 0.0001, maybe 1%, right? Like it sucks. I could see those people being interested. Like, have you seen that? People being like, I want to jump into stable coins and not Bitcoin, stuff like that?
I think generally crypto users love volatility. And I think that most users love leverage, volatility. And that's why like the perpetual products on BitMEX have been kind of the killer crypto product. And then that's why it's kind of led to an explosion of other centralized exchanges. And now soon, I think a lot of DEXs will offer this kind of real leverage. MakerDAO is all based on leverage. Compound is all based on leverage. It's essentially, this is all a way to access more exposure to volatile assets and hopefully make upside from that. I think that's generally actually the classic crypto user. I don't think the classic crypto user is somebody who just wants like 5% yield on their asset. I think that's a very niche part of the crypto world. But I think actually what's interesting is that all of these crypto protocols are composable, i.e. they're one token, mStable generates a token, and that token, which represents your collateral in mStable, can be used as collateral in a different protocol. So what we're designing, and this is actually coming with Save, is that there'll be a token for Save soon if it passes our proposal process, but I think it will because there's a lot of positivity around it. And that Save token will represent your deposits and any interest that's earned in Save, which is, as I mentioned, been a bit between kind of 8 and 15% APY since launch. And we're also thinking about adding meta rewards to savers. So you would be yield farming as well. So this token is like 8 to 15% yield, hopefully, plus meta. And we think that people could use that as a really interesting piece of collateral on, say, a decentralized derivatives exchange. So all of this kind of like what I think traders would be interested in is if they can still leverage and still be exposed to volatile assets, but the margin that they're posting is earning 8% yield in USD and yield farming. So I think like you got to create products for the main user group, but I think a real opportunity is optimizing how much that collateral, which is now pretty passive, is actually working for those users. So yeah, I hope that answers the question a bit.
That's actually really interesting the way you know, if you're describing using a collateral of a basket of collateral assets to move them somewhere else and like recollateralize that basket, like crazy stuff, but interesting stuff to explore. Yeah, to kind of end things off, you know, I know you went into a lot of the updates just now, but are there any new and exciting updates that you know you're interested in, or like your community members keep mentioning about? And then the last thing is, can you tell me your favorite crypto moment all of 2020? Yep.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, a couple of big things coming up. As I mentioned, we have a new AMM coming up, so that'll make the trading much more efficient. We have a gas upgrade coming up, which will significantly reduce the transaction costs on mStable. So we're excited about that. We're making Save composable, so you'll get a token from Save, which is pretty cool, and also doing a few other cool things with the Save contract. And then we're finally releasing mBTC. So there'll be a new asset and you'll be able to convert your BTC and earn an interest rate in BTC on mStable. So that's all happening in the next couple of months. So we're pretty busy as we finish off the year. But then, yeah, best thing that's happened in 2020. I mean, for me, it has to be launching mStable. We worked really hard to get it out there. and then people seem to like it, and we've scaled to an okay degree. It's still got a long way to go, and generally it's just been so awesome hanging out with the mStable community and being in Discord with them and kind of hearing their feedback on what we've built. There's a whole the other thing that I found quite hilarious was the whole sushi swap stuff, and I just think it's so funny, all of those things, like having a guy called Chef Nomi, build this protocol. It gets hundreds of millions in it, nobody knows who they are, and then the whole drama around it as well. Like, there's those kind of things. It's like classic crypto, and like if you were working in an investment bank in the traditional finance, you'd never get that kind of craziness. So the sushi swap stuff was was pretty funny, I thought, as well. But yeah, it's been a crazy year.
Yeah, couldn't have described it better. All of these events, people building stuff, they're all part of the industry. I certainly love it. Makes it interesting. And yeah, congrats on launching the MBTC soon. I know that when we talked to you last, that was like something that you were going to do. So I'm really excited about that. I want to earn some interest on my BTC. James, thank you so much for joining us again here at Reimagine 2020 V5. And everyone, I'm Roshan Mirajkar, one of your hosts for this event. I'll let you all tune back into the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Roshan. See you later.